In this era of uncertainty with the job market, the economy, right? We have been overwhelmed with, hey, AI is here, it's going to take your job away, and you better learn AI, right? It has been stressful seeing, news out there, leaders sending messages, every company pushing for everyone. You've got to show that you're using AI. So that is an indicator that, hey, we're doing more with less and we can be more productive. Yet those productivity gains aren't really happening. And for the individual, it has been extremely stressful. Even more so, this one size fits all change management approach that everyone should just learn AI and just play with it does not take into account that playing with AI is a highly personalized journey. And we need to understand that different personalities require a different learning path and a journey to embrace this. And how do they even respond psychologically to this? So, how do we resolve that? That is what I'm going to cover in this video. Hi everyone, my name is Shajat Ahmed. I worked for years behind the scenes in tech to influence executive decision making on talent, culture, and the future of work. In this video, I'm going to use research as well as my own intuition playing with AI, as well as intuition from my domain as a leadership and people analytics expert on how do we think about psychology and personalities and give them a guided path for how you could embrace AI so that they can stay relevant for the future, especially those who are going to get left behind by companies. With that, let's go. This is episode 4, part 4 of a 4-part series I started on myth busting AI's impact on the future of work so that individuals can lead without blinders. Right? I've been using this framework to help everyone understand how do we navigate this AI disruption. There are 3 questions that we ask. Should I, could I, and would I? And episode 1 of this series, I covered should I, where we're looking at what is the actual impact on jobs and what is the momentum of AI's impact. So we know, do we have time right now to respond to this? And in the second and third video, I covered the could I part, which is, all right, what's the impact on my career relevance based on where we're headed with AI's impact? And then how can I build a career strategy for the AI era? So we can help individuals answer, how do I plan for this? And now in this fourth video, we're going to cover the would I, which is based on where we know where this is headed and what do we need to do. Can we really do this? Is this for me? Is this meaningful and purposeful for me? And does my personality allow me to learn AI the way it's being pushed around on us? So basically help individuals answer, how do I start? So as a recap, we looked at this framework in our last 2 videos where you can map out what's going to be the likely impact based on what you do, what domain you're in, and then where do you provide value, which industry, which type of company that you're in. And where we landed on, we all want to point towards this direction on this framework, which is from what we do, we want to make sure that we become AI augmented experts in our domains so that we are constantly adding human value and it's not just AI that's providing value. So we're augmented by AI. And in this direction, in this vector of, and we want to make sure that we are seen as premium in terms of whatever value we're providing in wherever we're working, right? So, but that is one part of the equation because just knowing, where you need to go for and aim for, and you can build out a strategy, this path requires you to change the way you work and the way you work with others, the way you've learned as well. So the question is it for me as an individual? Because I think that is a key part that's going to define whether are we even able to walk on this path or not. So that is why the future of work for me is about helping individuals figure out, is it a future that works for me? And that equation involves 3 variables. It is about 1, job market relevance, which we touched about in this part, right? Which is, okay, how do I stay relevant in the future by being AI ready? But then it's also about, well, whatever I select as a name, does it give me meaning and fulfillment? And then also, can I use it for purpose as well? Now, purpose may not be for everyone, but at some point in your life, you do get hit with, okay, how am I serving others? And this visual that I show with the ladder, it's a key reminder. When I started my career, there was a constant race around me. There was constant stress around everyone in my peer group. You have to climb up the ladder fast. You have to go, and who's going to get there faster? So in that high anxiety and stress, I decided that rather than focusing too much on how fast I go up a ladder, I need to first figure out if the ladder is leaning on the right wall. And that led me to a very unconventional path and then unlocked me and why I am where I am right now. And so that's why I think it's key for, as we think about the future as well, is the ladder leaning on the right wall. And that target, whatever we pick, yes, it may have high job market relevance, but is it for me as well? And can I follow that path? Answering this key question, that where do I want to be in the AI future, requires us to not just look at how we're going to stay relevant in the job market, and that is through by being more AI ready. But in order to follow that path where we need to evolve our careers to stay relevant, is it also something that is meaningful for me? And is also something that is purposeful for me as well. And so with that, first question we're going to ask is, what is the psychology behind what people want and individuals want and how they feel threatened that they respond to this threat from generative AI? And in psychology, there is a self-determination theory that says humans feel threatened based on three areas. It is a threat on competence, right, in the workplace. It is threat about autonomy. And then there's a threat around relatedness, right? Relatedness being our affiliation with others, our connection with others, how we collaborate with others, and just our social fabric that comes through work as well. And how do we respond to that threat? Let me take you to the best reference I could give you. Again, a movie reference. Yes, I'm emulating as Morpheus in this picture from the movie Matrix. It is a choice on how we respond to these threats. And just like in the movie, we're offering a blue pill and a red pill. And the blue pill is we can either choose to ignore all of this and say, this is not for me and nothing's really going to happen and we're all going to be good. AI is just a hype. That's the blue pill. But for those who want to take the uncomfortable path of understanding where is this headed and what is my role in it and how can I create value in it and meaning and purpose for myself, that is the red pill. And we're going to talk about both of these today. So in order to talk about, I'm going to refer this paper that recently came out called Generative AI and the Psychology of Work by Erik, Hermann, Stefano Puntoni, and Carey Morewedge. It's a fascinating paper that looks at, again, those three threats I talked about from self-determination theory. The three threats that around competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And what they've done is, in this paper, they've looked at different types of roles, seen like the impact of generative AI that we're seeing so far, and then figured out based on literature from psychology, there are 5 different coping strategies that people normally leverage based on the psychological threats. And how do these strategies play out in each of these threats? Highly recommend checking this paper out. Let me cover how does it apply for our purpose today. Look at these 5 coping strategies. Some are reactive, some are proactive, some are basically just taking the blue pill, and some are taking the red pill. And again, how do each of these strategies work out for each of these threats that people face? And a great thing that they also argue in this paper is around the productivity trap, that while companies are talking about productivity and stressing people out and saying you have to learn and learn, they're not realizing the psychological factors, right? The psychological trap that people are in, that their inner monologue about how do I respond to this threat, both coming internally and externally for us, internally from our leaders and then externally as well, AI, macroeconomic. So external threat being AI. How do they respond to that? And that is why I've also been pushing for it. Is this focus on productivity only is not going to help organizations. They're going to regret it later on. It needs to be about prosperity first, the human prosperity first. Because if you're not thinking about these psychological threats, you will not get the outcomes that you're looking for. If it's not a win-win for the human and for the business, we're not going to get this right. And you're not going to create value anyways. So with that, how does it apply to us? So again, emulating myself as Morpheus, what I did was I looked at these 5 strategies and put them in the blue pill and red pill bucket. So let's walk through these 5 strategies when we look at this AI threat. So let's look at the red pill strategy, where one is first is called direct resolution, where basically it's saying, I'm going to learn the AI skills to stay relevant. I'm going to tackle this head on. Then there's symbolic self-completion that we see in abundance right now, where I'm going to get an AI certification to send a signal to prove my expertise. And there's tons of certifications and certifications and education programs out there, which I'll get to later on, whether they work for you or not. The opposite end then is the blue pill strategy, which is one, you just escapism. You just ignore AI and just focus on other things. You're like, it's fine. And then, or there's dissociation. I'll avoid AI-related tasks and just stick to human-only work. That's it. And then there's something in the middle. They've termed it as fluid compensation. I'll double down on my people skills so that I get myself more and more in that realm of being only augmented by AI, and AI won't be able to replace those, right? So you're taking a bet on purely that AI won't be able to hit those people only skills areas. So I'm just going to focus on that. So sort of like playing in the middle. So when we look at these strategies, right, I actually followed up with Stefano as well, because he's a professor from my alma mater. And it's like, I started thinking, are there certain personalities that, align well with one strategy over the other? And there wasn't one cohesive literature out there that covers all of this. So what I did was, taking my own medicine on AI, is I dug into how do I relate personalities back to these strategies. So here's what I did. Took my own medicine. Again, if I was working within corporate and a huge team of psychologists, researchers, data scientists, I would have said, let's try to figure out what does the literature say about personality. Let's figure out how does it align back to these coping strategies that were mentioned in this paper, so that we can help figure out, what would individuals need. It would have taken months, right? Faster than weeks, but not at this level, to be able to connect so many data sources when such literature does not exist that readily. Like, there's not a clear single source. So what I did was took my own medicine. I used deep research with Claude, and I gave it the prompt that, this paper from on generative AI and psychology work, it talks about these coping strategies. I want to figure out if there's literature around personalities. And it took some time, right? It took normally Claude responds really quickly, but it took about close to 13, 14 minutes. It got to 439 sources. And I was like, wow. And it produced this. So what I did was I went through, because we know the issues with AI right now. I always double check. I went through, so give me a very, very comprehensive report on almost every possible angle. I went through the sources. I didn't look at 439, but what I did was, for wherever it was making a statement for a hypothesis and sharing data, I made sure what was the key source it was looking at, and I went deep into those to figure out if they really make sense. I'm just showing a summary of this. If anyone's ever interested, I can just hit publish this as an artifact and share them. And to also give you an idea before I dive into how it applies to us. So one of the papers was this called 5-factor model personality, right? That looks at different dimensions of personality, right? And how do they sort of impact, especially from a work-related setting. It looked at conscientiousness, emotional stability, extroversion, agreeableness, openness to new experiences, and how they also predict, are your performance post-secondary academic settings. There's another paper here from Frontiers, published in Frontiers in Psychology. It is looking at, individual resilience in the workplace. And then how does, the collaboration, the workforce resilience model, how does that work? Similarly, there was another paper which was around relationships between personality and coping. It was a meta-analysis from more of a medicinal setting, but also looking at, mental health, and especially when it comes down to work setting. The sources were pretty solid. There's a couple of other sources as well, but these are the few that I'm highlighting right now. So let's getting back to the so what. How does this apply to us? We're looking at personalities. There's a practical reason that we've learned from history and technology of why we need to think about personalities. This is a famous chart from Jeff Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm. And basically what it shows is this has been the technology adoption life cycle, where anytime a technology has come in, right, there are this in the early stages, there are these tech enthusiasts, which are about 15%, right, of people generally. And they normally play with this, they think about this, they research it, they collaborate with each other. And then when a point hits where the technology really takes off and is abundantly used everywhere, that's where then the early majority come in, right? These are more pragmatists who are waiting for see how this technology plays out before they jump on this bandwagon. And then as it hits more mainstream market, those who are like very reluctant, think of as those taking the blue pill, they come in very later on, right towards at the end. And the reason personality is a key part is because when we think about AI, the price of response choice is going to hit us fast because the way the momentum behind AI is. It is not like that you could just wait and say, hey, this is going to hit us in a couple of years. The way it's going, it can hit us really quickly, no matter whether you're taking a red pill or blue pill. You may be taking a blue pill for temporary pain relief and sort of live in fantasy land, but this is going to come quick. This adoption cycle in technology, everyone agrees the way this is going to happen is going to be faster than anything else in terms of the way the environment has been created around this. Then, but this time, why personality matters because it's not just that you could be just wait and see game in this one. As this technology gets more mainstream, it is eroding your knowledge, the way you do interactions, the way you do tasks. So by the time you get onto this, again, remember the three threads: competence, autonomy, relatedness, would have already been at such a point that you do not know how you're going to even catch up with this because you may be at level 0 while everyone else has caught up into how to play with this technology. So the price of the response choice is going to hit us fast. So you are better off trying to play with this, even if you don't believe in it, because without playing, you do not know how quickly you get outdated. I'm going to share a bit of a history lesson on this as well. This is a very old book, The Labyrinth of Technology, from Willem Vanderberg. And he predicted to this point, right, how this price is going to be, that we're going to pay of how we respond to this is going to be extremely high. He happens to be from my other alma mater, University of Toronto. And the reason I mention this as well is about, I graduated from college 20 years ago, mechanical engineering with a specialization in robotics. And then when I started college, this book had just come out. And he was a professor of ours, taught a course on engineering and society. He's written multiple books around society and the impact of technology. They're very dense, so I don't know how everyone would be able to digest them, but we studied that in college. And basically, he talked about two KEEs, basically a knowledge embedded in experience and knowledge embedded in education. He said, based on the Industrial Revolution and then the Digital Revolution, what we did in the Industrial Revolution was that those who were close to the context where whatever knowledge was gained through the experience, right? Think about tradespeople. We separated them from the knowledge embedded in education as we became more scientific. So those who were getting more higher value and higher sort of premium and value in society, they were getting detached from the actual context in which whatever they're designing for was being delivered. So think of it like as the hand and the brain got separated. And a lot of the issues we see around mental health, economy, society, inequities resulted from it. And we need to think about technology's role in society, because if we keep going on this path, we're going to get polarized. And as the digital revolution came in and we had computers, those who were from that knowledge embedded in education, their knowledge as well was further getting digitized. So they were also getting detached, right? The knowledge workers. And they predicted that it comes down a time where technology completely, those who built this digital revolution, like the knowledge workers, they will end up playing a revolution on themselves. He predicted this long time ago. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. The paper on generative AI and psychology of work I showed earlier also talked about that, low skilled workers get a productivity lift. But the high skilled workers, why they get a productivity lift, right? But they also feel more threatened because the ability to be abstract, their entire existence is based on this knowledge embedded in education. That gets, the half-life of that, it's very shortened, and it's a huge threat for them. And what Willem Vanderberg also predicted in these books was we're going to get to a point where we will start going back to knowledge embedded and experience, where wherever we're delivering work, whatever context we're in, we want to, in that physical world, we want to be closely attached to it, because AI will help us there, and it will help us augment. But if we're focused purely on knowledge work, right, we're going to be constantly under threat if we're detached from that context. So we're going back into experience, and why I believe personalities need to be understood, because learning AI is an experiential journey. It is not just about gaining knowledge on AI and how to use AI. It is playing with AI so that we become artists in this space. And that is why the adoption for AI is going to be highly, highly personalized, because we want everyone to know that, hey, all of you can't wait to be the laggards, right? The late majority in this. The price is too high. What we want to get to is, how do we get all of you to walk through a path? But we know that one size fit all does not work. But based on your personality, how do we drive adoption so that someone who's sort of like in a late majority or laggards on this chart can start operating as an innovator, early adopter, but take baby steps the way that works for them so that they get comfortable. And the aim isn't to have everyone be like the tech enthusiasts. No, we actually need the conservatives, the skeptics, the pragmatists to be earlier in the journey so that they can bring more responsibility in around society, that it's not just about technology. The more these folks are playing, they bring other domains from humanities, from society, from law, from philosophy around this. That is why the adoption is going to be highly personalized. And if companies want to just give lip service to people, but still want to go and just force change management, it is not going to work if you're not able to personalize this. All right. So what does that mean? So based on all the literature, as you saw on the work I did through Claude Deep Research and all the articles, I basically landed on there are these 5 key personality types. And then there's a mix of 3 personalities, which are like based on those 5, right? And let me talk through the 5. So what the personality literature psychology says that one of the highest factors that determines how people respond and cope in the work setting has to do with the level of neuroticism. So, emotions, how do we think about, like, how do we emotionally respond to situations and the level of our response, right? So there's high neuroticism is a key factor. Then they looked at then is conscientiousness, right? Where we want to, achieve something, we want to get everything done properly. I want to deliver, we want to make sure that we're attention to detail. Then another factor is extroversion, that at work, we get energy by connecting from others, and that's how we learn and collaborate. And that's how we end up coping to when there's a massive change happening in the way we work. Fourth one is high openness, which is where we are open to new experiences, right? We are not just focused on how things have happened. And right now, we're always looking out for new experiences, even if they're ambiguous. We want to go and create and innovate there. And the last is the high agreeableness, right? Where people want to align with initiatives that help others and the benefit of people. And based on that, I sort of marked this down to 5 personality personas: the anxious warrior, high neurotic; the reliable achiever, high on conscientiousness; the social connector, highly extroverted; the creative explorer, high on openness to new experiences; and then the helpful collaborator, who like high agreeableness. And there are 3 others that I put out that are sort of a mix of these 5, right? So like call it the vulnerable worker, or the who's, is a mix of being an anxious warrior, but they want to achieve, but they're still right low on conscientiousness, right? They're achieving more out of worry than achieving more out of because of attainment. Then you have the defensive expert, which is the mix of the anxious warrior and the reliable achiever, right? That they want to become an expert, figure everything else out, but also want to be defensive. They want to make sure that they do not lose their value. And then lastly, you have the confident networker, who are a mix of sort of the creative explorer and the social connector. What do these mean for coping strategies? So I think, again, going back to the blue pill and the red pill from the Matrix, you got to know yourself to figure out how you AI, right? So the anxious warrior, their coping strategy is mostly around the blue pill. It is, I feel threatened, I'm going to escape or dissociation. The reliable achiever personality is mostly, I'm going to directly tackle this, or I'm at least going to do like symbolic completion of this so that people can see I'm an expert, I'm going to get certificates. And then the other three, the social, the creative, the helpful, are both either directly tackling this, or they're leaning more towards, I'm going to focus on the people-oriented skills. While understanding that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs and create new jobs, I'm going to focus on jobs that are very difficult for AI to take over. And I'm going to go one by one for each of these. My goal is, as you see me walk through this, see which relate to you, what resonate with you, and see if the learning path that I'm recommending works for you. Again, as a disclaimer, these are all my suggestions. I'm not a trained psychologist, but what I did was I looked at all this research. I am trained on synthesizing research and putting them into actionable strategies that work in the work setting. So these are my suggestions, right? These terms are my terms as well. I've not done any empirical research on this, but I've leveraged other research to come back and synthesize this for you so you can make sense out of this. So let's start with these one by one. Okay, let's start with the anxious warrior. Who are you, right? You're someone who stresses about job security and technological change, right? You see threats everywhere. Everything is a catastrophe, but you like routine. If I had Muppets with me, I would say you're like sort of the order Muppet, right? And you resist sudden changes. You're very particular about like, do not make mistakes, and I cannot look incompetent, right? Everything needs to be perfect. So most likely an AI coping strategy for you, because again, going back to, there's a threat on competence, autonomy, and relatedness in psychology literature. You're probably going to escape AI. You're going to avoid AI tools. You're going to procrastinate learning them, right? You might focus more on the negatives and just convince yourself AI won't last. And you're probably going to gravitate towards AI-proof jobs, right? And my recommended learning path for you, so that you go back to, again, that crossing the chasm chart I showed, is just start small. Begin with something simple, low stake AI tools that you use. You probably are using it right now, ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, or even something like Grammarly, or Hemming is a writing editor tool as well, AI. And I would say get support, join learning groups, or find a learning buddy who also wants to go into detail and is very meticulous, and just work with them. I think your focus should be on augmentation, right? In this personality, you think about frame AI as helping you, not replacing you. Don't try to run away from AI, but see it that, okay, you know what? Find a happy medium for yourself. It is going to be more for augmentation. So I'm going to use AI to augmentation. I'm not going to try to put a high critique that, oh, it can't replace me. See how you can use AI for parts that help you get better. And this kind of personality, where I landed on, when I think about personalities and what kind of learning plans work for people, I would say take breaks, right? Don't try to learn everything all at once. Just start with something small, see, learn from it, celebrate small wins. Because if you go really fast and do a lot of it, again, your threat mechanism is going to kick in, and you may just resist it or procrastinate. Do things, in bite size. What if, so you're the reliable achiever, right? This is someone who is, highly organized, disciplined, very ambitious, goal oriented, but they like everything to be a clear plan, right? And they like everything to be very systematic. But to back it up, they're willing to put in the work, right? They will master skills. They worry a lot about, we make sure we do things the right way. And I think your likely coping strategy is that you're going to create a detailed learning plan and stick to it. And you may look for recognition through formal certifications or structured courses. And you genuinely want to be competent, not just to look competent, right? And so I think my recommendation would be is create a roadmap, plan that learning journey, use your personality to your advantage with very clear milestones. But then when you approach it, look for structured courses. Don't just look at tutorials here and there. There's a lot of information out there. Formal programs are going to work better for you. Something that gives you a curated path is going to work for you. Although my pushback slide is going to be, if you're looking for certifications, there's a lot of educational institutes, pedigree institutes that are going to get disrupted. And they're trying to make money right now by trying to throw a lot of knowledge around AI. And if that works for you, start with one, but then see how much are you learning. But get comfortable with some informal programs as well. But to get started, start with some formal program. But the key thing for you is going to be you've got to practice regularly. Just because you went to a formal program and got a certification is not enough. You have to set aside consistent time for skill building and get feedback on yourself, right? Join communities where that can give you honest assessments in a very psychologically safe environment. Find a small cohort that is going to be good for you. So it's a mix of get formal learning in your roadmap, get the formal learning, but in parallel practice on your own and find some learning community where you can get that honest feedback. For those who are more extroverted, the social connectors, right? They're energized by working with people. They learn best through collaboration, discussion. They're also comfortable taking risks and trying new things out, right? They're not worried about making a mistake and looking incompetent. They see that as a learning opportunity. So their generally coping mechanism to embrace AI, adopt AI is going to be learning AI tools so that they can enhance their people skills, their social skills. They might focus on applications that improve collaboration, right? We already see that in the workplace that people are, they'll be posting on LinkedIn or they'll be sharing within their team, how this helped them on the collaboration part rather than focusing more on, hey, does it help me on my own little corner? And they like sharing that because it helps others become better at collaboration. I think the best learning path is definitely join AI learning communities. Focus on communication, learn AI tools that improve your human interaction. You can use AI to create simulation of how you tackle difficult situations, or you're going into a personal setting, use AI as a personal tutor, but we're already seeing people are using it. But also make sure that you're a social animal. Teach while you're learning, right? Take the concept that you're getting and explain them to others to solidify the understanding for yourself. And I'm seeing that already in communities, that people who do that, some of the best explainers, right? That when they started, no one expected that. They didn't expect it themselves to be such good explainers. Do that, right? Because I think that is what's going to help you reinforce and internalize whatever you're learning and also give you energy that you're helping others as well. And connect with others. Learning communities provide a lot of opportunity, right? Whether the professionals who are trying to learn AI, and share your progress publicly, because the personality of a social connector generally likes putting stuff out there as a way of accountability as well. And it forces them to then go do more of this and get better and better because they've already shared it, because they expect people to be asking about it. Then we go to the fourth one, the creative explorer. These are people who are curious, right? They are about new technologies, experiences, possibilities. They also like to understand how things really work and how they could become better. And let's think about stuff that is not there yet, but can we design it? They are the ones who are diving into AI for more creative pursuits. They'll think about, okay, everyone has said this is the status quo, things happen. Well, does this technology question that, right? And can I do that for a different way of doing? We're already seeing that, right? There are people like that who are, again, remember the crossing the chasm chart and technology adoption life cycle from Jeff Moore. These are the enthusiasts, the innovators in the early stage. And I would say your AI learning path, feed into that energy of openness, experiment freely, try multiple tools and platforms, and try them, because it doesn't matter how good or bad they are. That will just enhance the breadth of experiences that you have, that you can then use to curate for, okay, what really works and why it works, because you would have had that exposure. And we as creative, right, do it for content creation, use it for design, video editing. I'm doing this right now. I never knew how to do video editing or video, like creating video content, but I always wanted to. I've been using AI for that to play with it. And I was like, okay, this is great. It's very fulfilling. You're naturally, if you're connecting with others, like the social connector, the news will come to you. If you're following the right people, if you're sharing your stuff externally, news will come to you. The right news and updates are going to come to you. And I would say, think about for you is building projects, right? Create something from start to end, something original that for your domain, you're like, okay, this is how things used to happen. Here's a different way of doing it if I use AI. Complete that as a project and then use that to figure out, okay, let's think big. If this is the worst of the AI we have, as it improves, how AI might transform my entire field. And then say, okay, what's the next step? What's the next part of my domain that I could go and finish using AI as a project? That is your learning part. It is experiential, right? I would highly recommend for you to also join learning communities as well, because that's where a lot of these creative explorers are sitting. But you'll have to figure out what is the right learning community for you, because there's tons out there and a lot of them can be very socially oriented. And as we saw, right, in the innovation adoption lifecycle, see that in companies as well. Right now with AI, it's like 10 to 15% who really adopt it because they are these innovators. And so it'll take you more time to find these. Some of them might be putting it on like blogs or like Substack and stuff. If you can find those, great. But do your due diligence on what kind of community you're joining, because again, communities are being funded by companies as well, which I'm always like wary of. So, but if you can find a community of other creative explorers where you can discuss these projects and go into depth, it'll be gold for you. Lastly, the helpful collaborator, right? These are people who value bringing everyone together. They value harmony. They want to help others, and they want to focus on for them. Learning AI is about, can I learn AI? It can help me think about how AI helps people, how it enhances human skills. It is how we also make sure that AI reduces the inequities in the world, and how do we make sure that it doesn't further enhance them. And we want to make sure we're advocates for responsible AI use. You will see that in the news, right, around LinkedIn posts as well, around like in private communities as well. You'll see these kind of people as well, and we desperately need them. And for you, the learning path is going to be, okay, focus on the human benefit. Even, you can focus on responsible AI use and do all kinds of research, but that research does not go anywhere, and you will not be able to bring impact if you are not playing with it. So play with AI tools to figure out where is, sort of do a red teaming exercise. Where will this fail humans? And so that you can build a perspective around what can we do about this. And you can think about like AI bias, think about fairness. So become an evaluator, but to be an evaluator, you gotta play with AI. And so I think approach your learning path based on that. And I would say for you, take a more measured approach to AI adoption, because we have the worst of the best AI right now. So it's not going to be best. So for example, when I hear the term hallucination, I think like, well, hallucination is a bug, but in a lot of settings, it's a feature as well. If I want to use AI to be creative and see like what other ideas it can come back with, so that I can use it as one of the options for creating ideas, it's a great feature because it takes humans. If you put humans in a group setting and you ask them to come up with ideas, there's a lot of groupthink that happens. With AI, you can let it go loose, right, for ideas. But do it gradually so that your drive is mainly around how can we use AI to help people. So gradually test it so that you can do a bit of a due diligence and figure out, okay, in what settings, what it works. You will actually become a sought after expert as well, by those developing AI and also by companies using AI, right, eventually. Because you'll be thinking about that impact. But if you just stay in the research land and the land of, okay, this is just good, discussion to have with people around AI, that's going to be short-lived. That discussion has to be around based on your experience on learning AI. And so make that your learning. Learn AI so that you can think about responsible AI use. All right. How do I start? So we've covered these coping strategies, 5 personalities. What is my take on this? How do I start? So there's different ways of learning paths, but where I think the starting point is You've got to be AI curious. You may be AI worried right now. You have to approach this from curiosity, a mindset of curiosity. Learning paths on skills, applied AI, all of that comes later. The first thing is that mindset. You've got to be, it doesn't matter if you're an anxious worrier or if you are a social connector, creative explorer, helpful collaborator, right? The reliable achiever. And you have got to be curious. And from there, you then play with AI, learn the foundations, but make sure you're applying them. I'll walk through how I've done this. By the way, before I walk through this as well, what about my personality? And I can tell you that I relate to actually these bottom three combined. I've been the social connector. I get energy from others and learning from others and sharing from others. I've been known as someone who, highly creative explorer and thinks about stuff that others would not be thinking about. That is why I let future work. And then the helpful collaborator. I get value. I get value and energy from helping others and think about the human impact. That's what I'm doing. And I've actually, the learning paths I recommended, I looked at this when I was looking at the literature and said, okay, what is the learning path for all these three? Those are the learning paths I've taken that look at all these three. And that is why, let me share what I took as a path. How do you start? And that can help you as well. Start by being AI confident, right? Learn and apply foundations. If you do it about, consistently every week with this mindset of curiosity, you can easily become AI confident, where you know that, okay, it doesn't matter what the generative AI tool is, generally the rules, how you prompt, how you think about when AI gets lost. Also think about what does it provide and what does it don't provide. You will gain that confidence where you're like, okay, I have a hold on this. Like, this is not just a technical domain. Any non-technical person can learn this as well. And actually the future is for the non-technical person playing with AI, not necessarily you being a coder. And I did that. I put myself into sort of like hackathons, boot camps, first to learn, and then put myself in a hackathon. And I realized, wow, this can easily be done. I think the next stage then is, which takes about, I would say, 2 to 3 months, where you say, okay, I've learned this. Let's say vibe coding, prompting, tons of tools out there. And the idea isn't to learn all of the tools. Idea is, if you start building a common thread that, okay, there's a way to learn this. So you learn the way to learn this. The AI capable part is then up taking that to a major workflow of a domain that you know, that you're working in or you're interested in. And you take that and say, all right, this is how work happens. Solve it the way, if AI was not there, you would solve it. I do that on a daily basis, by the way, now. But when I started early, I said, okay, here's something I did as an exercise. Let me take that workflow. How much of this, if I using AI, what could I work there? Where it would augment me? What parts can I automate? And to get a full workflow done, fully capable, especially again, if you're busy running a job as well in parallel, I would say give yourself 2 months just so that you become really capable on a major workflow. I think from there, it takes another 2 months, I would say 2 to 3 months, where you think about credibility, where you go beyond the workflow. You think about changing an entire work system, right? A combination of workflows that you can overall, and it also builds credibility that you can actually, if you go for an interview or inside your company right now, or you wanted to build a startup around this, like, I can actually take this entire system of work and change it using AI. The reason I've split credible and capable is that you'll see a lot of these noise on YouTube. It's like, oh, you change one workflow and now you can make a multi-million-dollar company. Those are short-lived, right? AI is evolving really fast. Use 1 or 2 workflows to learn, build your capability, and then say, all right, now I'm going to step back and do this for an entire system. And if I can do that, then I've shown internally as well that I've changed the way our entire function work, our team work. You can go for an interview and say, listen, I don't just talk about AI. I can do that confidently. I've actually done it not only for a few workflows, there's a few projects. By the way, I've done it for the entire system. This is the way I thought completely differently about how we designed our team, designed our work. How do we think about AI tools? And at that point, the way we're headed, you also want to make sure that you've established a real brand because you're now credible. Make sure you're public as well. And I think it's a 6-month journey of practice. And the first month is the key. You go through that conference, there's a natural how you will learn what works for you and how you learn. And then along the way, you'll figure it out. But those 6 months, which you hit the credibility part, then you got to repeat it. This is such a high in running with AI that rhymes, a high with running with AI, that you will be repeating this ongoing. I'm doing that as well. But how do you take out time? This is a graphic I used on my LinkedIn a couple of months back from growthbyvisuals.com. That's their website. I really loved it. A lot of people resonate with it. Companies telling you that you got to be productive. And for that, you got to learn AI, show AI. And, this graphic, cracked me up. Professional athletes, they train majority of the time and then perform. They're trained so that they can perform. And companies, leaders are expecting all of us to be corporate athletes, but they'll give you this tiny sliver of time. And for a lot of people, they don't even get that to train and the rest of the time perform. And now they're saying, while you're performing in this high stress, uncertain environment, go spend time learning AI as well without knowing what's the right learning path for you and what is the practical path and what is the path that is actually going to be effective for you. They don't. So you do not have time. So how do you start? So I think so for that, I would say, look at the earlier parts of the video, looking at the different personalities and what are the different coping strategies and the learning paths that work for you. But as you build out your plan, think about this as your roadmap overall, broader picture, a couple of months where you're trying to hit confidence, learning the foundation, then getting to being capable to deliver a major workflow, and then credibility where you can just change the entire work system. And you could either do it internally or say, I'm going to go sell this to someone because there's tons of companies and people who need this. And then that's your zoom out, right? Your plan, your roadmap. How do you zoom in when you don't have time? And how do you carve out time in our lives? This is how it has worked for me. And I would say at a minimal, actually, I would say not just as a minimum. I think if everyone did this, it would lift your level up so much and as AI is getting better, you don't have to put in crazy number of hours. If you have more time, definitely go all in on this. I would say take about 2 hours applied learning. Whatever you're learning, don't just passively watch a video. Go and apply it, practice it, but do it in a focused time, right? Focused time is around deep thinking, right? You don't just want to do it for 15 minutes. I see these posts out there. Oh, you can learn AI by just 15 minutes per day. No, you're not. You're learning AI, but you're not learning AI for building your relevance, your career. That's your goal. You want to stay relevant for the future. That is your goal. If your goal is just to learn AI so you can showcase and, do parlor tricks and show people that, I take this course and I feel great about this, it's going to be short-lived. If you're really serious, I would say 2 hours of applied learning, but do it in a stretch. If you want to break it apart across multiple days and maybe do it at least 1 hour, focus time, turn some lo-fi music on if that works for you. Learn something, apply it and play with it. And if it's not working, let's say you're prompting and you're like, all right, keep playing with this. That focus time is required to play with this with AI right now and do it every week. You gotta take those laps. Think of it as a stopwatch. Take those laps every week, ideally multiple times a week. And if not, you're gonna combine all of that in one day in a week. Do it, but you have to do that because by the time this goes really fast and you have to now play catch up, the AI would have improved so much that you won't find a lot of the flaws and issues, the initial frustrations of playing with AI. Thing is, those frustrations, when you've spent enough time with them, teach you to also know what AI is actually about and where its issues are. What is the logic behind all of this? But if you try to catch up at a point when AI has done a really good job and AI companies have done a good job of masking those flaws, then you're like, oh, I'm just giving it a command and just doing it for me. You will not know where its boundary ends and your boundary starts, that human augmentation starts. And you'll become so reliant that you will always be under threat. Again, competence threat, autonomy threat, and alertness threat. With that is the end of this video. This is the part 4 of a 4-part series I started. Again, Does that mean I'm going to stop doing these videos? Not at all. I think this 4-part series, I want to put this overarching framework of how do we think about the should I, could I, would I, and hit different aspects of how do we assess impact on our careers, how do we assess, based on that, how do we build out our strategies, and then how do we figure out what I covered today? How do we approach this? Where do we start? And what I'm going to do, based on the great feedback I've gotten from people, is, and thank you to all of those, is going to keep going deeper and deeper, more tactical into within these, whatever I covered in these 4 parts, going deeper along the way for how do you actually do this. But definitely please like, subscribe, and comment, because that's the only signal I know that this is helpful, and it keeps giving me encouragement for doing more of this. And definitely send me any feedback around what are the areas that you would want me to dive deeper on in there. Again, I am heavily invested and focused on 2 audiences, especially. I'm covering everyone else as well, so if you don't find these audiences, still, message me. But these are the 2 that I'm focused on because I think they're going to be left behind. One are the mid-career professionals who don't come from coding backgrounds. They're age 40 plus, and they have this immense experience, but companies are going to leave them behind. They already are. And then on the other side are the Gen Z college students and early in career talent. They're being written off as well. And that's where I'm focused on. And in there's an overlap around women and underrepresented ethnicities that are covered in these 2 groups. And I think my goal is, by covering these 2, whatever I provide for these 2 naturally covers those in the middle as well. But these 2 are I'm heavily focused on. So thank you. And with that, have a good day. Bye.